We go to IPM program creation timeline, 1970s. We coined a term in the 70s. I'm really not sure. There is so much back and forth on this, even when we were in San Juan at our National IPM Coordinating Committee meeting. It's interesting because we're still not entirely sure, but I do know that many of the books we are familiar with come from that. So we were looking at, okay, what was our forefathers doing? Then in 72, oh yeah, that President Nixon guy formulated IPM into national policy. And I will get into this. 79, Jimmy Carter actually does formulate the federal IPM coordinating committee, and which results into the national IPM coordinating committee. In the 80s, we see our first literature, with the National Park Service being one of the first agencies to adopt IPM. It wasn't far after that that GAO, the Governmental Accounting Office, followed suit and came up with a document, and then it went to the military. And there are a lot of federal agencies that have been trying to follow, adopt, maintain, sustain an IPM program. But again, with people and time, it changes. So when you look at the early era of IPM, Dr. Pete Goodell will show you that, we started with these pioneering new radical tactics. Oh, sampling. We got these things called sticky cards and pitfall traps. But if you're doing any type of ag or non-ag, if you're not sampling or monitoring, you're not doing IPM. Baits. Oh my heavens, I remember when gel baits came on the market, and the structural pest control industry looked at that going, what the heck? Baits work effectively because if you understand the science, what did it do? It works on the target insect. Same with insect growth regulators, birth control for bugs. And now we've got birth control for rodents and birds coming out. Repellents, well, yeah, we don't want something to come to us, or we want an attractant using a pheromone to either bring something in and get it caught or confuse. Using those thresholds, what drives what action? But that does take people and time. The pyrethrins, we've got genetic control, and you've got biological controls. So again, through that time, we developed this, and yet over time, some of this hasn't worked. We've tried other things, and yet it's back to the drawing board. How do we get this going? Because again, what does everybody that calls us and says, hey, I've got so-and-so, what does it take to kill them? Especially when they're a county agent calling for a customer, because they want that silver bullet. But we're looking at new changes in the rules, and it's saying, what do we need to do? Do we need to have, some different monitoring methods in place? Do we need to have buffers in place? Do we need to have, what's the difference between having a managed area? Oh, it's got to look like something that you saw on one of the home and garden shows. Or is it a naturalist area and we're trying to save pests and not overuse chemicals? Because y'all, part of this is it's the human belief of what they see, what they have been told. This is what it looks like. Ask any homeowner who tries to put a cottage garden in their front yard and the HOA comes after them because it is not turf and it doesn't look like everybody else's. So are battles. And we've had some battles, especially in the ag world. I mean, when we created, when glyphosate was created by this scientist, it was I don't want to say it was the bomb, but it was. It really was. I mean, farmers were having problems with certain types of weeds that would get in the fields, and it gum up the machine, and you couldn't cut your wheat, or you couldn't cut your sorghum, or you could, I mean, there was all sorts of stuff. But that was the 70s. Think of what year this is. 80s and 90s. Yeah, we decided to develop some neonicotinoids because we knew what nicotine did, but again, science says, well, we can replicate this in the lab and not make it so toxic, and only make it toxic for certain things. It's still nicotine, okay? Then we did our adjustments. And this is where I really say, because as we started to learn science in the 90s, what were we doing? Trying to enhance products or commodities so that we could again get a good solid yield and not be concerned. But you keep going forward and keep going forward. And I just decided at 2010 we were stopping. I wasn't going to go, because if I went from 2010 to 2020, I won't go into how many more problems we have with herbicide and insecticide resistance, because the list goes on. So how did I get into this rodeo? Because it's been an interesting ride, because that top left corner is a month after I was hired, whereas the image, the tall, skinny image, that was at the International IPM Symposium, where, yeah, I was co-chair, but also was recognized as an award recipient. But this passion for IPM has been long brewing. And the reason I say that is I'm a product of the 60s, and I grew up in a region of the country where there was a lot of holistic stuff going on, you know. And then moving to the South, yes, I understand insects and stuff, but I also come from public health, and public health says moderation is the key to everything. I alluded to the fact that Dr. Merchant gave me this book and told me to read it my first month. He gave me this book, read this one. This isn't exactly the same book, but it was this book, and there was the other. And I know if you do pesticide safety, you work around pesticides, there's another toxicology chemistry book that he also put on my desk. Had no problem with the IPM book and Silent Spring. Those were great reading. This one, it's a killer. However, all of that gives you that foundation of what we're going to talk about. Because again, what's the biggest conversation right out there right now? What's a pesticide? Any substance or mixture of substances intended for preventing, destroying, repelling, or mitigating any pest. Does not care what the active ingredient is. If you think you're going to go out there and use CO2 or carbon monoxide and you're going to kill that rat in a burrow, EPA says we need to look at it. You're going to use cedar oil. Here's the interesting thing. EPA also says, well, there's this other classification over here for 25B or reduced risk, which makes our job even harder when we are trying to converse with an audience that when they see a slide like this, I can guarantee you their eyes fog over, they glaze, faint, whatever, yeah. It's Charlie Brown. And then for us practitioners, and if you're a student watching, this is your world moving forward. We all heard about this. We all knew that the Center for Biological Diversity and Pesticide Action Network had filed this complaint in California against EPA saying, y'all are not doing what you were charged to do under FIFRA Therefore, we are going to sue you, feds. And it took them 11 years. 11 years to work this one out. And yet on the backside, pesticide safety, IPM centers, EPA, USDA, pick an alphabet, pick a state. We knew this was coming because what we were seeing some problems along the way with some not so nice headlines. Whereas by 2022, and there was a slowdown, the slowdown, there was this big event in 2020 that changed like a lot of things. But during that big event of 2020, which again hit that EPA agency with the fact that, oh my gosh, we've got people trying to register these products for this, doing weird, nefarious snake oil things. We've got to do our due diligence. Therefore, that's why we got two documents. We got balancing that wildlife protection and responsible pesticide use. Because again, pesticide stewardship should be everybody's concern, not the 10% of us paying attention. We know chemicals have consequences. We know about resistance. We know that there's secondary pests where it can upset the balance. We know that it can kill natural enemies. Oh, we also know that there is human health issues. Just go out there and do a CEU workshop and look at the aging population and ask them what health issues they've had. And if they've been doing this for 40 to 50 years, you'll know. Environmental factors, again, we're worried about runoff. Water is water is water. And if we're going to lose water because of climate, we're going to have to be better stewards of what we're doing. My favorite map from the pioneer.com people, which again, I attribute this to my pals at the IPM centers, is again, look at how many resistant species we have of glyphosate just in this country. I'm not going north of our borders or south of our borders or anywhere else. We're not even looking at Hawaii and Alaska. And I look at my home state and it doesn't make me feel warm and fuzzy, okay? Again, from our buddies, IPM benefits. We know this, but here's the thing. And this is the hardest part. How do you explain IPM to the person on the street? Could you imagine if we were Jimmy Kimmel or Stephen Colbert or any of those late night talk show hosts, and we go out with our mic and our camera and go, so tell me, citizen, how do you feel about pest management? And if we're in New York City, I dare to say we probably get an earful. But even if you move out into the country, people don't put two and two together because we understand good public image. We understand cost effective, decrease in pesticide resistance, increase in beneficial insects. But how do I whip that up and make that into a 3-minute or excuse me, a 60-second commercial? Our problem as educators, when we go out to educate, is this. You go to tell anybody, I've been doing school IPM now for 22 years. Structural pest control for about 20. I had to get my license first, but yeah. But even talking with my ag folks, trying to explain a system that is complex, that it requires the sun, the rain, the moon, the stars, whatever else, human behavior. How do you do this? Because that becomes a challenge if you are a small operation or someone that doesn't know how to ask for help. So looking forward and looking at some of the summary of draft mitigations from the EPA, most of what they're looking at is outdoor uses of conventional insecticides, growth regulators, herbicides, fungicides, and miticides in the outdoor environment. I mean, pretty much if it's indoors, we think we've got that nailed down, but I'm not betting on it. But what we're worried about is what's going on outdoors. Where are you doing it? Why are you doing it? FYI, rodenticides has its own mitigation, and that one's also out there. And that one will make the hair raise on the back of your neck. So what are some of these things? Because again, we're framing IPM. To us, a lot of these things that if you're telling this to a producer, hey, these are the things you're going to need to consider if you're going to do this, this, or this on your ag operation or your garden or this. Avoidance. Well, prohibit the use in key areas inhabited by endangered species. Well, yeah, they've got a map for that, but I just think of all the things that we don't know and what we could be and could not be doing. Provide exceptions if the user gets input from Fish and Wildlife Services field office. Again, there is going to be mitigating circumstances because of truth and natural disaster. Because following a natural disaster, we know there are numerous problems that happen. But on a day-to-day basis, minimization of spray drift. Well, we've been trying to get them to do this for a few decades now. And we're just going to have to keep working on it. But again, how do we get them to realize what is a windbreak? Why would you need that? Why would you want to have that on your property? What about wind direction? Don't be that human that says, oh, I don't care. Those rules aren't for me. Because again, we've got to instill that in some of our audiences of how do we do this? Because they're going to see some of these things and these mitigation processes moving forward. And y'all, because we're the messengers, we're not going to be perceived as the nice people in the room. You know, I just don't like when you go in and find 50 angry men looking at you because you said, oh, you're going to have to do this before you can apply this. Runoff. 50 years they've been on runoff, and yet we still have problems. But we're also not targeting every audience. Most of these mitigation practices are either on an ag producer or a licensed applicator. Ag producer or a licensed applicator. Our problem is this. We are also not targeting the right audiences out there. We do a little through our master volunteer training, but we are sure not, again, reaching an audience that really needs to be better educated about their role in managing the environment. Again, EPA, when they start doing some of this, when they start doing their pilot rollouts, they have to look at those species, timing, what's going on, the environment, everything we need. Again, they've given us this menu. If you're in ag, it kind of made me take a pause back. And yet at the same time, and the reason I bring this up, this International IPM Symposium, I look at this list and go, gosh, there's probably some things we should be discussing at that meeting. I look at this list again and I'm thinking some of us are writing our EIPM and our CPPM grants. And these are also objectives that we're looking at. But again, we're the United States. My own state, my state, Texas, is bigger than most European countries. It's the size and the scope that we look at when we're looking at this and going, how do we do all of this and not have a panic attack? So for those of you, if you are really, haven't been keeping up and you're not sure where to go find it, I made you the cute little QR code so that you too can go to EPA's website and see all of this information. And if you're having problems with insomnia, can I just tell you, break out the 130-page document, you'll go to sleep. And then look at the rodenticide one. Matt Fry's just going to be ill, okay? Because on the rodenticide one, just to give you guys a window into this one, because again, I'm familiar with a few people in your state that do rodent management. This pretty much looks at every one of our rodenticides. We just had Rodent Academy here in Texas last week. And when I asked every one of my class participants what's in their toolboxes and how many don't rotate, again, I was not shocked. I was like, and this is why we have problems with resistance. So yes, rodenticides has a draft biological evaluation to look at the effects on endangered species and their habitats. I'm not going to go through this for the comments because there's a lot here. If you're really into rats, check out Matt Fry or feel free to give me a call as well. But I will say this, that again, Appendix B and then the supporting related material, which you can also find on that QR code, is all in there. Not light reading. So let's get into what I really want to talk about. Educational outreach. What? Because here's the thing. We as practitioners, as researchers, as educators, we have a responsibility to help others understand what is our passion. We're facing these mandates, rule changes, reactions to what we use in our toolbox because there is a population that doesn't understand. And again, if they don't understand the full story, they are only going to react to a portion. And this is true no matter what you do. In public health, we talk about this. Social scientists have a field day with this. But we must understand that when we are working and we are educating small crop producers or legislatures or whoever, they are still all human. They come with their human beliefs, and it is our role to help them understand that scientific knowledge. So remember when I said that, oh yeah, Jimmy Carter came up with this Federal Integrated Pest Management Coordinating Committee? I'm not even gonna, we laugh with NIPMAC. I can't even imagine what FIPMAC, okay? But this group, this federal group of people who are in other federal agencies who practice IPM have a role that filters down to another group that helps to determine this national roadmap for integrated pest management. If you do IPM, if you do not know this document, you don't read it, understand it front and back, shame on y'all. Because it's what formulates what I do. It formulates how we run our EIPM program in Texas. I mean, it's the basis of, it's how we hope to run the International IPM Symposium because it's got good foundational points. 3 potential approaches for strengthening IPM. Improve economic social analysis of adopting and implementing IPM practice, including assessing the benefits of practice of adoption. So while we were in San Juan at our NIPMAC meeting, and I'm watching these scientists interact with these social scientists from the back of the room, it was quite entertaining because here's the thing, people like stories. There are a few humans out there that will take the data and love it. But if I'm talking to Jane Doe, if I'm talking to anybody here at my center about what I do, I sure can't throw them a lot of data. I can throw them some. Reduce potential human and safety risks from pests and related pest management strategies. School IPM in Texas, best example. We didn't want them spraying because we had a couple of geniuses decide to spray for head lice using cattle products. But this was also the era of everybody use a little bit of a Dursban and diazinon. It goes a long way. No. Health and safety. Because minimizing those adverse environmental effects from pests and related pest management practices. Sometimes, yes, we do focus too much on the pest and not the management practices, because all we want is what? That silver bullet. Again, where's the human? Here's the second part. To promote IPM development and adoption, increase the benefits IPM provides nationally. The roadmap calls for an enhanced investment in new strategies and tactics for pest management. If you build a better mousetrap, they will come. Well, yes, we've had some building of better mousetraps because of what I do. And I'm looking at the rodent monitoring sensing devices. But again, this is it. And it's not going to be just this. Drones. What can we do with new technology? Because I'm a geek about a specific show that airs on History Channel every Tuesday night. And they are using so much technology to discover history that this is also our future. Public and private education infrastructure, including existing land-grant university IPM and pesticide education programs, we need to do better. And there's funding for it, but again, huge country, not enough people, not enough time, not enough enthusiasm, because they just look at this and go, wah, wah, wah. Communication about the importance and effectiveness of IPM. I've seen too many presentations. I do it myself, and I'm like, the bigger population, for instance, the school teachers that work in these school districts that have got an IPM program, they need a story. They don't need a fact. They don't need the law. They need to know, well, why can't you just come and do this? Because it's the adoption and the implementation of IPM plans and programs that is the hardest thing for us to translate to somebody else. When they get it, they get it. And then once they become an adopteree, bingo. But it's not easy. So changing the conversation to inspiration. It doesn't take much. And I know we're all busy and stuff, but I threw these different visual images up here because there are some documentarians out there. You know, Sir David Attenborough, he's been on there for a while, but Morgan Freeman's another one. But this younger Shane Campbell Staten, there are some Gen Xers that are also trying to change the conversation. And this is going to be hard for some of us. I don't podcast well. I don't I've got visualizations, but I don't know how to get them out there. And yet I know that there is an entire generation that only knows how to function through this device. So pulling this all together and bringing everybody in to what is coming down the pike. For the 11th International IPM Symposium, and please note that we only meet every 3 years. That's why we're at the 11th and not the 40th or something. because we started back in the 90s. We've had great results with this conference and not so great results. COVID changed everything. But we are also, as a steering committee, as practitioners, as researchers, as educators, are also trying to change this conversation. We are working with a group called NAILR, and NAILR is helping us, meaning the IPM Symposium group, to have a better conversation. NAILR works with folks like the National Environmental Health Association, Pest Management, the National Pest Management Association, big groups that put on really good dynamic conferences. But with ours, our problem with the symposium, just so you guys know, 100% volunteer. Every last one of us that works on this has a full-time job. And we just dial in to have fun on this. Myself, I went to the 6th, I believe it was the one in St. Louis. I had been in my position for a few years. Dr. Merchant dragged me up there to this meeting. I was finishing up my master's degree. I do remember talking to Mike and going, gee, Dr. Merchant, if they don't hire me, I guess I'll have to go get me a job someplace else. And by the end of the meeting, y'all, our state IPM coordinator, Dr. Tom Fox, came out of that meeting and said, I'm going back to Texas and I'm going to fund you because the work you were doing for school IPM is phenomenal and we need you. Y'all, IPM is something I live, breathe, because it's about practicing prevention, balance, and understanding. If you think I'm going to put up with a bunch of fire ants at the house, no. I mean, yes, I do research on rodents, but do I really want to kill them? Yes, I do. So if you are interested in participating in our symposium, we're going to be working with some vendors. It's a lot of fun. It's going to be a lot of fun starting in January. I welcome you to either reach out to me. You can reach out to the IPM Institute, Ryan Anderson, there's Marnie, there's Kelly, there's a whole bunch of us working on this. But for now, I'm going to just go ahead and throw my name out there if you're interested. So finally, again, why practice IPM? In case you needed a reminder, preventing initial pest problems, keeping the ecosystem intact and functioning, relying on one tactic can be problematic, maximizing the effectiveness of control tactics, promoting a healthy environment and a good public image, conserving those natural enemies, and protection of soil health and crop production. Remember, key elements of an IPM program: identification, know what bug you've got. In my state, there's a huge difference between those 2 darn cockroaches and those cute little odorous house ants. Well, you know, only an entomologist who likes ants loves them. Inspection and monitoring, thresholds to guide the response, reporting, sanitation and waste management. Yes, that's a people thing. Maintenance and pest proofing. Oh, that's another people thing. Selecting management methods and products, probably a pest management professional thing. Education and communication, anybody can do that. Evaluating what works, and then understanding rules, regulations, and policy. We don't need a rule for everything. Sometimes I think this country's gone a little over control. And again, finally wrapping this up, regulations are not usually anticipatory, but are responsive to some problem, perceived or actual. Education is much less invasive and much more cost-effective solution to problems than regulations are. I mean, again, y'all, if I could come up with a catchy commercial that could be aired that gave our message, I think that would do more for us than anything else. Because again, or a sketchy comedy show about pest control. Just saying. People being humans, and by their very nature, imperfect organisms, it takes more than an idea to get their attention, hence the story. Therefore, there are times when we need regulations. That's why we have speed limits. The use of agricultural chemicals will continue to be necessary to produce the food and fiber needed to feed, clothe, house, and protect the ever-expanding world population. I thank you for your time today. I hope you enjoyed this presentation. And like I said, feel free to reach out to me if you've got questions, comments, concerns.
Great. Thank you, Janet. That was excellent. Yeah, so we've got a couple minutes for some quick questions or comments. I have one, but I'd rather let someone else have a chance. So feel free to unmute yourself or put it into the chat. I don't see anything. So yeah, Jen, I was curious about yeah, I think it's a great point to start the education about IPM early, even in schools. And are you seeing classes or like certain quarters or curriculum developed for IPM
Yeah.
up around Texas, and what do those look like, and at what age do they start?
So it's not Texas. USDA under NIFA has an entire educational program that does have IPM in it, and it's 4-H, it's for FFA, it's for VOAG teachers. And I say VOAG because vocational and agriculture generally go hand in hand. Maybe not so much up there, but I know we have vocational teachers that teach a variety of things, even the landscape stuff. We actually are piloting a class for high school students to prepare them to become landscapers that possess the licensing to do landscape management when they graduate high school. So, I mean, there's lots of stuff out there. It's just, again, it gets buried in all the noise. And then again, I was forgetting, oh, where's the resource?
Do you have any anecdotes of particular stories? You mentioned storytelling is so important. I agree. Is any stories that resonate with kids?
Not for kids. I generally have to resonate with adults to get them to do things. Because Matt will appreciate this one. Matt and Jody was working with a school district. They had an outdoor learning environment that was way overgrown. But their problem, the reason they called me, was for rodents. They wanted me to come out and help them with rats. And we're going through all the scenarios and stuff. And I get back in the truck to leave. And as I'm driving away, I look over at this environment and I stop on the curb and I take a picture from outside. And when I sent my report said, you have these problems, but what I'm really more alarmed about is that you have this natural area that any child predator could lurk in here that could possibly harm a child. Do you know that vegetation went away like that? Had I said raccoons, skunks, and rats could hide in here, they would have got around to it. I said child predator, and that was like, oh, yeah, we'll do that. And I'm like, yeah, sometimes you got to use creepy things to make people do things. But you're like, what, well, do you really want that vegetation? Because yes, I tell everybody, if you're preventing the two-leggeds, if you want to prevent the two-leggeds, prevent the 6 and the 8 and the 4, and you'll have no problem.
Great. All right. Well,